Drifting on the ocean, sometimes I pass by an island, but there's nothing there for me. I move.
What's up, everybody? This is RoGamer128, and if you know who I am from Twitter or my streams, you'll already know that I'm a pretty massive fan of Bethesda and the things that they develop. So I was stuck on ideas for making actual content for YouTube. As of this month, I am pretty strapped for time, so I'm not able to stream as regularly as I was. So the idea hit me. One of my favorite games to play, or a series of games, I should say, that I love to play are Bethesda titles, such as The Elder Scrolls, Fallout. I like the original Rage. It was actually really good. I enjoyed that quite a bit, and now they're putting out a second one to that, but that's not what this is about today. So I wanted to focus on that a little bit and actually take it back into the history of where one of the many titles from Bethesda began and how it was taken over by them themselves. So this is part 1 of Bethesda HQ, Wasteland. To begin, we start with a completely different developer, Interplay Productions. This company was founded in 1983 and is well known for a couple of legendary titles they've put out, such as Baldur's Gate and even Diablo. That one's a little bit more popular than Baldur's Gate, but it was a little bit more mainstream of a multiplayer title back in the day. So, we're going to focus on the creation of Fallout and what they believed to be the predecessor of Wasteland. Wasteland is set in the same type of universe the Fallout series is. It was originally developed by Interplay and was published by EA. The game was made for the Apple II computer system and was later on ported to the Commodore 64 and MS-DOT. Wasteland was a critically acclaimed game and received massive amounts of love from the fan base that followed it. It was received so well that it was planned to have 2 sequels following it, but EA intervened and turned one of the sequels, Fountain of Dreams, into a totally separate title that was unrelated to the series. But the foundation for what Fallout would become was there within Wasteland, so using that setting concept, Interplay took that and ran with the new IP, Fallout. The true beginning of the Fallout series started with Interplay acquiring the license to use the GURPS role-playing system in 1994. After working with those who developed GURPS, the work began on Fallout. Originally, the game was created to be an actual sequel to Wasteland, but later became its own separate title. The starting budget for Fallout was around $3 million for the early planning stages. There was also talk of including multiple time travel systems and stages in the game that came from GURPS, but it proved to be too much work to get finished in such a short amount of time. But none of the GURPS system implementations mattered because the license was pulled late in the stages of development due to all the gore and violence. They deemed that a little too much for them to put their system in there. So everything had to be converted to a new system, and they called it Special, which had to be done basically for free in a short amount of time to meet a deadline. Tim Kaine built the new engine and systems within 6 months with no funding and no resources at all, completely alone. Fallout, so in total, was built on the compassion of the devs. This is pretty impressive considering how difficult it is to do all this with no funding and in such a small amount of time. At one point, while building Fallout, Interplay slowed to work on Diablo. Then when returning to Fallout to finish it, the game almost became a multiplayer experience, that of what Diablo was, like the upcoming Fallout 76 with less systems. But they decided against it and stuck to making it a single-player story. Just goes to show that Fallout has been in the backs of minds for a long time to be multiplayer, but never actually being done until now with Bethesda's latest entry, 76. Something I found interesting with original Fallout was that it was designed as a linear story path, but in order to hit a high enough level to complete the game, you had to venture off and do side quests. Otherwise, the story would become too difficult to beat, which you see something of the total opposite nowadays with Bethesda and the difficulty scaling systems. You can now run through the entire story and not have to worry too much about what's coming up next. In my opinion, I would like to see a return to this type of system, as it makes you adventure more and get a lot more lore out of the world itself, although there's many that would probably disagree with that. Another interesting fact I came across while researching for this video is that saying war never changes originated in this first Fallout. That was something I've never known. My first time really hearing this line and paying attention to it was the release of Fallout 4. But also to mention that the saying, war never changes, was almost switched to, I don't want to set the world on fire. But because of running into more licensing issues with the ink spots, it never changed, and instead they just used that song within the game itself. One thing I took note of was how many Easter eggs actually made it into Fallout. few of these including reference to the movies Forbidden Planet and Mad Max. There was even some wearable items that resembled those of Mad Max. Not to mention the TARDIS and Elvis Presley made into the final cut in the game. But one specifically caught me off guard, and that was dog meat. I realize now that this is another Mad Max reference, but I'm glad to see Bethesda sticking to the roots and carrying that over to the new titles. Now I want to move into the reception of the world that got their hands on Fallout. And it was great. Every major PC game publisher fell in love with it, and it got top marks. Those scores carried over for years. Fallout never dropped lower than top 50s for video games, and that wasn't until 2005. I feel like that's pretty legendary and shows how great of a game this was. The community blew this game apart with love. Never really tired of it. They wanted more. They were given it. You can find people still playing this game today and still being thrilled with it. There's a reason it was inducted into the Hall of Fame after all. But with massive popularity comes the negative as well. If you search the reviews of Fallout, you can see people outraged that Wasteland wasn't given the sequel it deserved. And instead, the community felt as if they were betrayed by this new IP in the same universe coming out. This solely wasn't Interplay's fault, though. The publishing with EA is what really stripped the community of the sequel they so desperately wanted. Not to mention that Interplay was working with a near $0 budget at the end of Fallout's development. The proof is in them having to create a new engine with no money to help its creation. Even though there was drama with the community and the publishing and loads of licensing issues, Fallout still came out and was considered a masterpiece. Entry level, all the characters, the dialogue. It was all considered to be art. And it shows with what they released and the praise that it received. All of this has been just backstory to Fallout though, and the creation of it, the studio who put time into it. You may be asking, what is the game about? What do you expect from it? And I can answer those slightly. I haven't played it myself, and sadly I don't know if I'll be able to, just because I don't know where to find it right now. But from what I found out, I can at least give you a basic rundown of it, maybe show some screenshot art. When you start up the game, you're in Vault 13. This is when the main quest begins, and you're tasked with finding a water chip to fix the one that is broken inside the vault. The water chip is used to recycle contaminated water, make it fresh and drinkable. You originally have 130 days to find the chip and save your vault, but during gameplay, you come across multiple different ways to extend that time. You also run in different towns that are optional for you to either help or attack for your own personal gain. Coming across caravans, you have the option to send them to Vault 13 with water supply to extend their survival time by 100 days. Doing that gives you plenty of time to explore the world, but you're still in need of the water chip. Once you arrive in the central city, you find Vault 12 hidden beneath the center of the city. Going there will get you the water chip. Once upon returning to your vault, you tell the overseer of all the creatures you saw in the wastes. But one that concerns the overseer the most is the super mutants because they are organized. They are led by someone who calls themselves the Master. The Overseer tasks you with going to face the Master and to attempt to end the super mutant armies, destroying what's left of the world. This moment strikes me, and it catches my interest quite a lot, because throughout all the games you hear of the Master and how he creates the super mutants, but I've never actually seen him or known that you face him at any point. To know this took place strikes me as very important, as it foreshadows a lot of conflict in the following games. Even though you face the Master and kill him, the super mutants still run across all of the US and transform others into super mutants to continue their chaos. What would have happened if you met and killed the Master before you had a chance to mass create the super mutants? What would the rest of the world look like? Of course, you would still have ghouls and other creatures to deal with, but super mutants are organized, conflict areas that you have to take. Take for instance a mission I played earlier this week on Fallout 4. They took over, shut down a water treatment facility that farms needed to raise quality, edible crops. To me, that strikes me as someone still out there being the main leader, someone directing them. If they were all truly chaotic and wanted to destroy anything that moves, their free will would drive them to just break. But that seems to be a strategic move on their part. It seems more planned, less just in the moment. To further that point, I recall also on Fallout 4 that they occupied a satellite array to interfere with radio signals. That also seems a little too strategic to me, but this isn't about Fallout 4 the super mutants. This is about what started all of it. Let us continue. When the Survivor is setting up to take on the Master, this is the first time we meet the Brotherhood of Steel, and the Survivor joins them to take on the Master. This is the last main part of the storyline. Something that seemed very cool to me was that in the original Fallout release, the Survivor had 400 to 500 days to get the water chip and kill the Master, or you would lose the game. If none of that happened within that time limit, you would auto-lose. But if you get the water chip, don't kill the Master, the ending is a loss, but super mutants find Vault 13, rampage through it, killing everyone. But if you kill the master, get the water chip within the time limit, you are exiled from the vault. But I read that if you have a certain perk when being exiled, you kill the overseer and the game ends. Later on down the road, Interplay released an update that would extend the time to win the game to 13 years to give the player enough time to do whatever they like.
Drifting on the ocean, sometimes I pass by an island, but there's nothing there for me. I move on as the wind blows, hoping to wash up on that shore, and the sand will hold me.